Will you be in the booth?
Yes.
Alrighty. Very good morning to every single one of you. First of all, before we start the debate, I'd like to congratulate every single one of you for making it to the double octos. My name is Izad. I'll be chairing this round as a single chair. On site government, we have MRSM Kuantan, and on site opposition, we have ISKL. All right. So, without any further ado, full wording of the motion. I don't know. Full wording of the motion.
This House supports the actions of Greenpeace, PETA, environmental NGOs in eco-terrorism.
Okay, so I'll call this out to order. And on that motion, I'll let call upon the Prime Minister to defend the motion stand in his name. Here you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, when activists from all parts of society have long fought for the environment, we think when they receive the backlashes that as the counterpart or the retaliation from the owners and the capitalists, we think that it is highly unfair, and this is why we are going to justify the actions that has been going on from side activists itself. We have two justifications in this debate. That number one, it is justified the actions of property destruction or basically eco-terrorism in nature. Why is it justified and why is it needed in society? Second justification is why do the environmental NGOs need to support them and what are the reasons? A few characterizations that I have in this debate. Number one is the environment. The environment has always been regarded as a common right to every individuals that exist in every part of society. In the status quo, we are seeing the constant depletion or the constant decreasing of the steady depletion of the environmental itself, and we think that this is fairly problematic. Sit down. Second thing is the environments are defenseless in nature because that they cannot actually protect themselves from the harms that society poses towards them, and we think that it is highly unfair, and it is only fair if someone is given the right or the liberty to actually defend those people. Second characterization is the ecosystem. Mankind forms a fragile ecosystem that exists in the society. The agreement between individuals to live in prosperity in order in the trade-off of actually not harming the environment in nature. Because of the harms that has been going on from a part of society, we think that is highly unfair. Third characterization is the capitalism that exists in society. Because of the agreement, therefore the agreement that have been signed as a natural law of the ecosystem, we think that the equal benefit and also the equal effect of the environments should be shared equally among all parts of society. It means if I take the fruit disregarding property ownership, I think that the effects of it should also be shared among equally in every part of society. Fourth characterization is why do environmental NGOs should be the one who actually support these activists. Activists need the moral legitimacy in this psychological warfare. We think that they are outnumbered in nature, and we think it is only fair if the people who actually defend their main objective is the one who supports them the most. In this debate, I have 2 points, which is social reformation as justification of this. But before that, yes.
So your principle is that the legal movements that are using should do any means necessary. Do you agree that racial minorities, the LGBT and feminists should also employ these extremist methods in fighting for their legal causes?
Sit down. LGBTs enjoy different privileges that they have in this in society. In nature, they have sorts of narrative that actually defend themselves towards majority that exists in forms of natural discourse. We think that the environment does not enjoy the same privileges that these people have, i.e. the ability to speak out their interests. First point in this debate is social reformation. On the first level of argumentation is the right in the ecosystem. Because of the environment, when the mother nature cannot defend themselves in this situation, they are open to all sorts of attacks from every part of the society. In this nature, we are actually targeting the people who owns major factories, for example. And these major factories, we regard them as capitalists, and therefore we think that the right of every individuals in the state are abused. How? Ladies and gentlemen, we think that everyone of individuals are affected when these capitalists have constantly given damages or defects towards the society, and we feel, for example, global warming and also acid rain. These are the defects that we all are experiencing because of these few people who enjoy the benefit of it. And we think this creates the imbalances that exist in the society itself. Second level is how or why are these imbalances exist. Because of the imbalances that exist in society, we think that these people reap the benefit. Sit down, sir. The small part of society actually enjoys the most part of the benefit in this debate, and therefore we think that it is only right when social reformation exists in order to actually act as a check and balance system to actually balance it out because of the imbalances that exist. Number one, we think that what have been going on in the few past decades is shallow ecology in nature. We think that, campaigns that create awareness is actually sufficient, but in fact, it just creates a false sense of belief to the government that they are actually doing something to protect the nature. We think that this kind of reformation is not going to happen, and we think that it is fairly disruptive. Secondly, we think it is only fair if there's a radical and a drastic change in society in order to actually change the mindset towards their behavior towards the society. Third level, why are there no any change in society? Number one, because of the idea of the tragedy of the common that is going on in this in our society. We think that because there are no forms of check and balances that exist within the context that the individuals and the environments are actually having. Sit down, sir. Because of that, we think that the depletion will be on a constant basis and it's not going to improve in any way, because these small parts of society enjoys the benefit of it, and therefore they are not going to simply just forego those benefits that they are actually having. Fourth level of argumentation, sit down, is why there are no check and balances system. Because when capitalists have the upper hand in this debate, for example, they have the leverage, which is in forms of money, these people are lobbyists in the majority. For example, we think that of course we can see to the fact that there are laws stating to protect environment, but we feel that these laws are insufficient when the lobbyists act and have a leverage upon politicians itself, because the form of leverage that they have is money. It is actually easy, they can actually easily influence those politicians to act on behalf of them and to actually constantly damage the environment at a constant basis. Fifth level of argumentation is why social reformation is needed. We argue that without dramatic reform, humans will not change their behavior towards them. Irreparable damage will constantly be going, will be produced towards them, and we'll have to actually, all of the individuals have to actually somehow get on the effects of it. Sixth level of argumentation is this: what realization are we talking about in this sense? We need to understand that the only way how this problem is going to solve is when society have the realization that they only inhabit this place and they do not own, they do not have the right to actually do what they want, and therefore we think that this is majorly problematic in this sense, because humans have always regarded themselves as the apex predator of the society, and we think that this should stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Now to begin the case inside of opposition, I call upon the leader of opposition. Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, no one is going to contest that the environment is important. I will begin by rebutting a number of minor points in their case, and then I will begin on characterizing the proper way for PETA, for Greenpeace to go about bringing social change. Firstly, I would like to contest their idea that feminism and the environment and the LGBT movement must all be separated. I believe that in all of these movements, there is a victimized party. This victimization, as you will see later on in my speech, is extremely important to the legitimacy and support that groups will receive. I agree with all of their definitions of the environment, of all of these overarching ideas. We do agree. However, where we disagree is how to best provide for the environment. I do not believe that equating PETA to a terrorist organization is not in the best interests of the environment and will do nothing but harm its legitimacy and ability to be an actor in social change. Our mechanism is that we need to continue to give peaceful education. We need to continue to teach people instead of offering them ways to raise up in arms, instead of condoning illegal activities as an acceptable means to bring about your agenda. Eco-terrorism, ladies and gentlemen, is not the answer and will do nothing but harm these people, not only in the short run, but in the long run. Our stance is that violence is the worst possible thing that one of these NGOs can do to champion their cause. So firstly, why does this not work? Why does eco-terrorism have no legitimacy? Why does it not work as a method? Firstly, it harms the wrong people. When you harm people through eco-terrorism, you do not harm UPM Botnia. You do not harm Shell. You harm the guy who is forced to work there. According to a Hobson's choice principle, you are forced almost by nature of your situation to take a job that will give you money to feed your family. So now I wish to take you into the northern region of India called Ladakh. Say that I work there. Say that I work for UPM Botnia, a foresting company. I work for that company not necessarily because I am a firm believer in their principles, but because I need money to put food on the table for my wife and children. I do not know about the repercussions of my actions, but one day when I'm going out to chop down a tree, some PETA activist, some other activist, they spiked the tree, and so when I was cutting it down, a bunch of nails were shot into my face, I died. Was I responsible for this great problem? By them condoning these activities, does killing me bring any activism? What value is there in losing this human life? What you need to do is harm the large companies, and by eco-terrorism, you do not do so at all. When you conduct arson, when you burn down an oil rig, you do not hurt the company. All that you do is you draw media attention to the countless lives that you kill, the countless lives that you cut short in your quest that the government would have turned into a white knight quest. What we believe is that this makes them look terrible in the media, and this makes them lose all form of public legitimacy as an actor. Explaining further on this, shall I? The reason that PETA, the reason that Greenpeace works is because of something called sympathy narrative. The reason that you support Greenpeace is because Greenpeace is on the losing side, because Greenpeace is fighting an uphill battle, because they need you. What would you do if Greenpeace was suddenly the bad guy? What if Greenpeace was suddenly worse than the evil that they were trying to combat? What if they were using worse methods? What if they were harming more people? What if they were causing more social unrest than the company that they are trying to combat? If this is the case, then they lose that sympathy narrative, then they no longer are legitimate. Governments will no longer interact with them. The governments no longer care what PETA has to say because they just killed 20 people. When you move yourself from being a sympathetic organization that can invoke sympathy, then you no longer can be a champion of one of these lesser causes, of one of these causes that it doesn't have a voice, as they say, a victimized cause. I'd like to bring an example from France. I have lived in France. I know France very well. When the Charlie Hebdo case came about, I was deeply saddened. What occurred there was a pure example of what the problems are with their concept. A bunch of people who believed that the Americans should stop, that NATO should stop using drone attacks in the Middle East. They decided that they wanted social change, but they went about it in the wrong way. What they decided was that violence was the answer, that violence was an acceptable means to bring about their generally peaceful idea. They simply wanted to have their families stop being killed, but because they brought violence into the equation, violence was what was met by them. They no longer were the victims. They no longer were the ones that were subject to these attacks by drones. Now they became the guys that shot up an innocent newspaper. Now the entire Western world has united against their people, and now the conflict is far worse, no thank you, maybe in a moment, is far worse than it had been before, and no further progress is made. Before I continue, a point of information if you're
So how is it actually similar to owners of the shell or whatever companies are you talking about, that they receive the privileges and the benefit that they get from actually destroying the environment? How is it similar?
It is absolutely fine. We agree that Shell gets great benefits. We agree that Shell harms the environment. But what we do not agree with is the idea that you are going to make it so that Shell is going to have to arm their workers to protect them as an economic investment. What we believe is that when you kill that first worker, Shell has to replace them. So what are they going to do the second time? They're going to determine that they need to arm that worker, that they need to protect that worker, so they're going to give him an assault rifle. Now you've got two groups with assault rifles shooting at each other. Does that actually help the environment? No, it does not. It is not only a social and economic waste, it is a waste of awareness. It is a waste that could have been focused better through education, through our mechanism on actually saving the environment. In Eastern Europe, it is a patriarchy. Women are greatly marginalized. Recently, though, they attempted to rise up against this, but because they did so in a more violent manner, they were brought down upon, and now the feminism movement in Hungary, in Bulgaria, has been tarnished to a point where women are looked down upon even greater than before. Ladies and gentlemen, do not allow this to occur to the environment. We all can agree that the environment is very important. Let us not make it a fair assumption that PETA, that Greenpeace, is equatable to ISIS. It is for that reason that I'm extremely proud to oppose this appalling motion by the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader of Opposition. Now, to extend the case from state government, I'd like to call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Speaker, we believe that there are problems that they haven't been actually touched when my first speaker has came. Number one is that they fail to see that the situation now is really crucial. Like when you have people who are so damaged, like Shell itself, that holds billions in asset, can just shove things into into people, right? Because these people have a lot of power in the first place, right? So they fail to concede with that. Second, we believe that moral high ground is not happening right now in the first place. It's because that we have seen that countless of environment violation happen, but there's no dire change that is happening right now in the world, right? So that's why we can see like things like the Greenpeace, right? We can see that their voice are not being heard. Why? It's because people do not realize that they are there in the first place. We can see that even in school, we learn about environment, we are informed. But do society change? No, right? They have to prove that. Second, of course, you say that it will affect the people who is working on the ground, right? But we said that yes, it will affect, but the things that will be affected is the Shell itself as a whole. How? It's because when the news say that these people attack Shell, it's because they have when they actually harm this situation, right? People will not actually put the blame on the people who actually kill them or actually causes these people in the first place. So you have people on both sides who will actually discuss, is it wrong or is it right in the first place, right? Fourth, Mr. Speaker, we believe that they haven't actually solved the problem when people have a lot of things that they could easily shove and close the harms that they did in the first place, right? They must prove to us that organic change is happening effectively, right? Second, when we have to actually condone into this action, because number one, they have already disenfranchised the right of the environment, right? The right of the people who are really dependent to the situation, right? So we believe that it's perfectly fine when some people act in with harm is because in the first place, the society has been causing harm and has been taking their rights in the first place, right? And when they give the idea of gays, Mr. Speaker, gays can actually talk, right, Mr. Speaker? They have the voice to actually go inside and go outside and actually talk, right, Mr. Speaker? But when you have things like whales, Mr. Speaker, and trees, they do not have the mouths to actually go out and actually speak out, right? That's why we need this type of violence in the first place, right? Which is going on to my first point about how radical change is imperative, right? Before that, yes.
Can you falsely guarantee to me that if I were to spike a tree and burn a building, that's going to objectively result in a more green
Mr. Speaker,
if you cannot guarantee that, is it then just to harm the workers on the ground?
Yes. When they give the example of France, right, like violence is not effective, Mr. Speaker, then we can give you the example in the UK, right? Because the female group actually use violence and actually go on to the streets and actually causes harm. That is how the female in the UK actually have the right to vote in the first place, right? So when you want to argue that the fact that we must make it slowly is not happening, is because it is okay when the situation is not crucial, but we're saying that the world is actually really harmful right now, right? So on the first point, when we have society that is not actually changing, like, because mankind feel that they are actually higher than means that they have the absolute right to society, means that they could actually cut down anything they want, is because I am the most top in the world, right? So because this is further asserted with authority, which don't even actually assert the idea that we must protect the environment at all costs. This happens worse because when the authority itself do not affirm this, how would society will be changed? So then when we do not have people who actually fight for this cause at a very strict way, then it is hard for us to change, right? Because we as society will not feel that this is actually harmful. It's because we do not have a thing that will actually cause us to open our mind, like things that we learn in a very subtle way will not happen because there is not something interesting about it in the first place, right? Because we need a really dire situation to prove that these people are desperate, because these people are actually shell or things like that are actually causing too much harm, that the people actually have to take action into their own hands, right? Before that, last one.
If I'm an authority and an activist within my jurisdiction burn the building, what's more likely? Am I going to immediately pander to everything the activist is asking, or am I just going to send that?
Mr. Speaker, we believe that of course we do have people who will blame these people who will cause violence in the first place. But we believe that when we have a society where discourse of the importance of the environment does not even happen in the first place, we believe that we are accepting that even if there are harms, we accept that because we want discourse and we want people to actually talk about it in the first place, right? Third, it's actually a form of protection. It's because these people attack is not because they easily want to create violence to the society. It's because they feel that their rights are disenfranchised in the first place, right? So when these animals or people who are affected are given a justified action, right? Therefore, Shell cannot bring them into the court of law. Therefore, this movement will not always be sued of their actions, right? So this will further strengthen, is because now they feel that they have the protection by the upper hand, that they will always be supported even by the law itself, right? So we have proved that it will create natural discourse within the society. We say that it is justified. These people create violence in the first place is because they are severely harmed by big corporations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Now, to extend the case from side of opposition, I call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Good.
Members of this august House, there is nothing more important in today's day and age than saving the environment. But the means that government would propose jeopardizes those ends. And therefore, in my speech, I only have 3 questions to ask. 1, who is really going to be harmed by the government proposal? 2, how are NGOs like Greenpeace and PETA going to look post their proposal? And finally, how will thoughts about the environment among society be affected? These are my 3 substantives, and rebuttals will be integrated within them. So looking at this first question, who does their policy target and who does their policy hurt? One question here. Are workers that they're going to harm liable? We say more often than not, no, because these workers live in isolated villages like Ladakh, where education opportunities are usually very little. A lot of these people don't go to school or colleges, and as a consequence, are uneducated and don't understand the implications of their actions in a broader perspective. It's not like they join because they like to destroy trees. But secondly, even if they did at some level understand that their actions are bad for the environment, oftentimes they're forced into the position of working for these companies. Governments in places like India, no thank you, and lesser developed countries don't provide for their people as well as MNCs do. So when MNCs come in and provide jobs, these people are put at a Hobson's choice to take those jobs to feed their families because there's nothing else that they could have opted for. That was the Hobson's choice that these people were put into. It seems extremely unfair to me, no thank you, that these workers on the ground are now going to be used as political pawns for you to reach their ends. Because these are the people that their faces will be shredded when the tree explodes, the spike tree explodes. These are the people that will be in the building innocently working that soon goes down in flames. It's wrong to have harmed these people for your cause, even if your cause might have been just. Then we ask you the question, are the MNCs in charge of this pollution that are based in Chicago and San Francisco and London going to be harmed? Not at all. These people sit in their offices, shrug their shoulders and just think, hey, I'm going to hire more workers. Sure, maybe now the jobs look less attractive because they're dangerous. No, thank you. But like I said, I'm rich. I'm just going to pay you more and make those jobs look more attractive. Given that these people in these minor villages already are so beleaguered and need the help, they're still going to sign up for these jobs. The worst case scenario for you is if I as an MNC now think I need to protect my worker, I will just arm them, or I'll have a militia that big companies usually have access to just monitor my woodsmen, right? And the worst part about this is you put your volunteers that are going to be carrying out your policy also in a direct line of fire. That means the eco-warriors and the hippies like me who will be walking into this forest to spike them get shot. Not only do the workers get harmed under your policy, but the volunteers that enact your policy also get harmed. What does this mean though? It means that less volunteers are going to want to join your policy or join NGOs. The reason my mom is more than happy to let me go to Greenpeace is because it's regarded as a peaceful organization of hippies. That I'm not likely to get hurt, we're moderate, all we do is talk, really. But now, if there are reports out there about Greenpeace volunteers that are being actively shot and harmed in carrying out their in carrying out their policies, my mom is less likely to let me go and join. No, thank you. God forbid, I also will not want to go and join. And that's how your policy strips the ranks of the NGOs. The conclusion to this argument is that you don't harm the MNCs you want to harm. Yes, these MNCs have unfair advantages. Yes, they have money, but your policy doesn't touch them. It touches workers and it touches volunteers that are pawns under the grand scheme of your policy. So, next question. How does it make NGOs look? Because we argue too, the victim's narrative is extremely important. What does the victim narrative do for an NGO? We say people love moderates and people love beleaguered movements. What this means is that governments, trade unions, and society is more likely to engage with them. Nobody likes to compromise with terrorists. So it's much more beneficial for Greenpeace to put up a moderate front because it means it's going to be invited to more conferences. And only when it's invited to more conferences can it start pushing for new green laws. No, thank you. What does losing the victim's narrative do? We say it's a death blow because people in governments no longer want to engage with you. They see you as terrorists and move away from you. And worse, corporations themselves don't want to engage with you. Corporate social responsibility and corporate image are important for a lot of big MNCs. They're not all evil. For example, Starbucks thinks it looks really good on them that they use green wrappers for their coffee machines. They hire people from, they like to look green because people like to buy into corporations that they feel are good. But the moment you lose the victim's narrative, corporations don't want to compromise with the enemy anymore. You polarize these two ends, making them such an enemy that why would they want to
compromise and make small alterations like put Greenpeace logos on the wrapper of coffees. We think that's what you lose under your side that we can guarantee under our side. But where does the victim narrative go then? You shift it from a beleaguered NGO to corporations, because now corporations are bad and we can all agree that they pollute the environment. But suddenly they don't look so bad because they're being killed out there. Some sympathy can be generated for the corporations that become a victim to the NGOs that are now militant and extremist. We think this is more sympathy than the corporations deserve, and we're upset that you're giving them this kind of rhetorical power. Before I go on, I'm happy to take a POI.
Can you tell us how these conferences that you have been fighting for can give a drastic effect to the society?
Yeah, I happily concede. We've seen little to no progress, and it's very difficult for us to fight this uphill battle. But we have a better chance of doing it here than over there when you ring the death knell and lose our victims' narrative entirely. Third harm, you create a division in the ranks of the NGOs, because now the NGOs are joined by hippies and people like me who like peace. But the moment you condone violence, you're going to get a lot of extremists who want to hurt people joining too. This creates division between the two sects. There are going to be people, no thank you, who want a moderate approach, and there are going to be people that want an extremist approach. Then you'll see the splitting, just like you saw with the splitting of feminism. This is bad because now at least we have a united front against the might of corporations. You destroy that united front when you create this division amongst our ranks. It's wrong to say that all your eco-terrorists are suddenly going to have like knights in shining armor that want to fight for the cause of the environment. We think you're going to get a lot of loonies too that want to come in and damage corporations that they don't like. This only needs to happen once. The media only has to report once on a perverse incentive for the whole NGO to lose its apolitical status and to be seen as an anti-corporation movement. That's really bad. But what about media? This is my final substantive. Because are they likely to get media attention? We say in most cases no. This happens in isolated places like the dark that you don't even hear about. But when you do get media attention, the media attention is no longer about the issue at hand, but about the extremism that's perpetuated for it. Best example is Ferguson. It was a law enforcement issue. A white guy could have easily become victim to police having guns as a black guy could. But because a black person was shot, the media decided to sensationalize the racialist or the racial sentiments, thus moving the focus of the people away from the real problem, which was law enforcement. People were fighting on the streets because of race, but not really solving the problem at hand. That's what you do for societal thinking. The media will report the violence, but not the incentives behind the violence. As a peace-loving hippie, I tell you there's nothing worse you can do for our movement. I'm very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Now to summarize these standard parts from government, I gladly call upon the government with. Here.
Mr. Speaker, let me see what's the wrong about the opposition side. Let's see how their case will not even give effect to the long run, because first they accuse they said that people will lose their lives, and I questioned them. Look, okay, let's see that we will stop this eco-terrorism because of the lives of the people. Then let's see what's happened at the end. That this when this eco-terrorism doesn't exist, the society goes back to normal, and will not this environmental movement will not be as effective when eco-terrorism exists. So this shows that how their stance will not even give effect to the longer run, because yes, it only saves the life of people, but what's more important, such as environment, which gives effect in the longer run. So why? Because first, environmental is actually gives effect better to a longer run, because now in our case that we believe that eco-terrorism gives a firm stance about our belief that about protecting this environment. So when we give a firm stance to the people, to society, then it will give a better effect. Like we don't, even if that we don't say we don't care about the harm of the people, then we say we look, we don't care about the harm of the people of the world, because what we need is a firm stance. We cannot see that we're actually giving empathy to the people just because in a trade-off for destroying environment. So this shows that how their side is not actually solving the case, the problem in the first place, and they accuse us about how that our stance will actually harm the company. Look, look, when you're actually when you're actually giving arms to the people, it's not actually harming the shell. We're not actually getting shell kicked off or something. We're just actually showing to the people that how shell is actually destroying the environment. We're not actually going to destroy shell in the first place. So the only way for us to actually give an effect is actually going into the constitution of the shell or of this corporation, such as they give it a direct effect to the workers. Therefore, this kind of way can give a great effect. Then Shell will actually now realize that what they have been doing and what the ethics of the eco-terrorism in the first place. And the second speaker accused of how that government will not engage because now we're actually practicing violence. That is entirely wrong, because right now, but the concept of radicalization of environment, now the government and the society can see the presence, because they do not concede to our characteristic of society now, because we already stated that society right now is not actually not enough awareness about this environment in the first place. So right now, if this radical environment movement happen, now people can see that, okay, why the way thing that how this destruction of environment is very important. So actually right now the government will actually engage, will actually see to this issue, but because of this ethics that this eco-terrorism actually practice. And second, they talk about victim narrative. Will distinguish. Look, victim narrative will not distinguish, because right now it will actually more strengthen, because right now it gives it's more effective, so it will not be tarnished. And second, even if victim narrative is already is gone, like right now we can concede to this environment, like these environmentalists are not the victim. We cannot see them as a lower part of society. Now we can see that their narrative are just as same as our narrative. Then we can see that, look, they're just as the same standard as us. So even if victim narrative is tarnished, it gives a good effect, because right now their narrative can be seen as equal and not just seeing that these people are just being victimized. Further, yes.
So you're happy to consider that your policy doesn't harm the MNCs that are disproportionately advantaged. Your policy is just one of awareness. Then why don't we just have more movies, books, and TV programs?
Look, the thing is about that awareness, that we only see that right now awareness and movie, it does not give that much effects. Because why? Capitalists, people are still these corporations are still doing this kind of destruction, but we see that how awareness doesn't give that effect. So we believe there should be a physical to this issue. Therefore, it will give an effect, not just like giving movies movies and books to the people. So we believe that is not give a great effect. And second is that violence. They accuse of how that this context already show a concept of violence. Why? Because why I show that why violence doesn't exist, because you can't blame the eco-terrorists of being violence, because at the same place this corporation who being terrorized by these eco-terrorists are doing violence against the environment. Because I can't blame my friend for being bad, for stealing food, but at the same time, I'm actually beating him. It shows that how you cannot put a value of violence if you cannot blame, the corporation cannot blame the eco-terrorist people for being violent if you're doing violence at the environment. So it shows that how the concept of violence does not exist. The corporation cannot blame violence because they're actually practicing violence at the same time. So even if there's violence, even if violence is bad right now, that people will now see that that the government is actually saying that, look, eco-terrorism is bad. Now people won't even join. Right now people won't even join this eco-terrorist. People will not join. People will actually be afraid. So what will happen is now that the green movement will not actually be as effective as before, because right now people are actually demonizing this movement, and now people won't join, and this will give a great effect to the environment, because right now the green movement is not as effective as before, and at the same time it's being demonized. That is my case. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Government Whip. Now to summarize the opposition substantive part, I'll let call upon the opposition whip. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, I'm getting camera.
Oh, here? Okay. Can I begin? Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what I'm going to do in this speech. First, I'm going to look at some of the miscellaneous and minor points they brought up in the argument, things they've accused us of doing, things that they've raised that our case does. Then I'm going to look at the core principles of the case and tell you where they've failed in achieving greater environmental good. Then I'm going to talk to you about the core issues of this debate and tell you why we have taken these core issues and why style opposition has taken this debate as a whole. First, let's look at these. Let's look at the accusations they've raised against us. They accuse us that our policy doesn't really create societal change. I beg to differ. When they consider that our policy creates education, when they consider that our policy does teach school children about the environment, they've considered that our policy in and of itself builds awareness and builds public will and builds a movement, an unstoppable force of changing public momentum towards a society more directed towards shaping and changing our environment. And we can see that. We can see this in the reflections of our government and of our society in recent times. The fact that this debate even happens shows that we're willing to now have discourse and discussion about the environment. And even though if they do not buy this, I can give you further examples. I can give you how George W. Bush, a man of, shall we say, questionable intelligence, was still even able to recognize the importance of the environment and save thousands of miles of Alaskan land to be preserved for the sake of the environment. I can tell you that in the recent year, the US Congress has voted 96-1 to legitimize and recognize the fact that environment is a dire issue. These are real examples that prove that our policy is currently working. But let's say they don't believe it. Let's say that even if these were untrue, well, under their policy, they would make our fight to legitimize the environment, to prioritize the environment even harder and even worse, because they'll make the environment look like a bad guy, as Nish and Andrew have told you throughout this debate. And let's look at something else they've said, something that I felt was a bit questionable in the terms of morals. They said that we should prioritize the environment over human lives. It's okay for us to kill humans because ultimately these humans are killing animals and killing trees. First of all, I'd like to question the morality of this. This statement is intrinsically immoral because, ladies and gentlemen, they're tarnishing the sanctity of human life. But let's say you don't believe in that human life is sanct. Then let's look at why we fight for the environment in the first place. Because we fight for the environment in order to preserve our species, in order to preserve us as a human society. As Nish and Andrew, not thank you, as Nish and Andrew have told you that the environment is linked to the idea of our safety as a species. So why can they claim that they can hurt human beings in order to save the environment? It seems contradictory to me. No, thank you. Now, with this done, I'd like to look at the case that they presented to us. The first point is one that is a truistic one, that Mother Nature is under fire. And we can agree that currently that we are in dire straits. But let's look at how they would wish to solve it. Because what they've said is that they would target the cause without telling us how their policy of eco-terrorism would even affect the cause. And as they've said, the cause is these capitalist fat pigs and their factories polluting our rivers. But how will you affect these factory owners by killing their workers? How would you change the mentality of these people only pursuing their self-interest by killing people who they don't even care about, who they used to, who they exploit to gain further profit? I like to compare this to this idea of a parent and a child. Let's say we're trying to halt vandalism, and you see a parent tell his child to vandalize that wall. What side or proposition they're trying to do is that they wish to beat up that child to stop that parent from continuing his crusade of vandalism, and we see that's wrong for two principal reasons. First, you don't actually affect the parent because, you know, the parent doesn't care about the child, obviously, since he's sending the child to vandalize. And second, well, even if you do stop vandalism, at what cost? You paralyze that child, you hurt that child, you make yourself and you make the policy and the idea of the environment look like the killer of innocence, and that's not a mantle us eco-warriors should be fighting for and fighting under. Then let's look at the second point of that case. This of that they provoke radical and drastic change. And why is that better than our policy of a slow and unquestionable public change of will? Now they seem to think that under their mechanism, they create further discourse and further awareness. Well, I have two things to say to that. First, as I've already mentioned, and as Nish and Andrew has already mentioned, there's no guarantee that you will even create public will and media awareness, because these occur in isolated areas, in distant forests that the media doesn't quite venture into. But let's say they do create media awareness. The media won't be reporting about the heroics of your eco-warriors. They'll be painting a picture of eco-terrorists, of men hurting innocents, of killing innocent people and leaving families fatherless. And that is not an awareness that we should be doing. That the discourse that they claim to create will not even happen, because as governments have always said, they will not negotiate with terrorists. And when you paint the environment as a terrorist, or you paint our cause as terrorists, you remove the possibility of that discourse. I'll take a point.
This is because we believe that when societies actually see news like this, of course some of them will see them as a bad thing, right? But we do have society to actually see that why do they do this thing in the first place? What on your side, this cause not happening in the first place.
Thank you. I think I understand what you're trying to get at. And this is the third point, which is they try to justify the immoral killing of innocents. This kind of relates to how to that principle that while that idea is right, because what we're doing is we're killing the people who murder trees. That murdering these innocents is okay because they're murderers of rats and trees. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we admit the environment is essential, and we're not trying to trivialize that. But what we're really talking about is that what you do with the environment is that it doesn't work, because we've shown to you in multiple occasions that violence does not perpetrate good morals and good activities, and it's actually harmful to your cause. And so when I talk about the core issue of whether or not they can do a good thing, protecting the environment, but in such a horrendous way, I've shown to you why we won on two aspects. First, because they can't prove to you that that bad way will achieve this good thing. And second, because even if it does achieve it, you make that good thing, you tarnish that good thing, you besmirch that good thing, and we cannot allow the environment to be tarnished in such a manner. When you take the knight in shining armor, that is Greenpeace and that is other NGOs like that, and who protects the innocent damsel in distress that is the environment, and you turn it into the dragon that knight was trying to kill, you do not create discourse, because governments don't negotiate with dragons, they kill dragons, and we cannot allow our cause to be killed in that fashion. And for that reason, I am proud to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, opposition. Now, to begin reply speeches, I first of all call on the opposition reply speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, awareness, media attention is central to activism. But there's no purpose of being seen if everybody hates you. Do we like terrorists? Is that even an actual question? When we are in school, are we taught to settle problems with our fists or with our words? That is generally where this disagreement sits. We, side opposition, believe that we should use discourse, we should use words, instead of punching people. The guiding question of this is how to best provide for the environment. We believe that contrary to what the government states, they will actually be punching themselves, they will be punching their own cause, and therefore they will be detrimental to the own thing which they claim to hold so dear. Simone Beauvoir was the female emancipation via peaceful protest, because governments were happy to engage with them. How would this have looked if they would have used violent methods? We've given you so many examples, but before I go deeper, I'd like to give you a few more. What if Gandhi had decided that Indians needed to rise up in arms against the British using weapons and violence? I don't buy their argument that if you have an oral orifice that you suddenly do not have any legitimacy in not being a victim. I'm sorry, but just because gays have mouths does not mean that they do not have a cause. How would this have looked, ladies and gentlemen? Martin Luther King was the champion of the American civil rights movement. It was because of his words, it was because of his actions that the United States was able to overcome a great amount of segregation. The Black Panthers, the polar opposite, use violence. Today, they are looked down upon as a defilement of that movement. They are the Black Panthers. We are Martin Luther King, ladies and gentlemen. They claim that in the long term, they will better provide for the environment by making these organizations so powerful that they will be an unstoppable force of change. But we counter this, ladies and gentlemen, because is it really a long-term change if nobody ends up joining your movement, as Nish clearly explained, because it's hated? If your organization is demonized, then why would anyone join in the first place? Therefore, you don't have a movement. Therefore, in the long term, no change. Moving forward to the fault in their policy. It is absolutely unlimited. There's no regulation upon their policy. If you listen to it, they simply said they would allow anything for the sake of the environment. Where is the line drawn? Are we going to kill 100 people to save one dog for PETA? They don't state that. They don't clarify that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is an acute vagueness that cannot be accepted. When you are going to be dealing with the lives of human beings, when you are going to be dealing with the rights of the environment, you need to be precise, you need to be cutting, you need to be clear. And that is something that side government has distinctly failed to do, ladies and gentlemen. Why have we won this debate? Why has side opposition won this debate? We have won this debate because we have recognized that even though the environmental movement is far lacking, that even though it is not going where we would like it to be, it's far better than destroying that movement in the first place. It is better to have a movement that doesn't really do much, than have a movement that is hated upon, than have a movement that will self-destruct. The government would support these organizations. The government would support violence in an unlimited way, which we do not find acceptable in any way. The whip speaker said, I'm going to explain to you why violence doesn't exist under our policy, then proceeded to explain to us how because both sides are violent, there is no violence. I find this a direct contradiction to their first speaker, to the Prime Minister's speech, stating that arson and that pretty much any means would be acceptable. I'm sorry, but arson is violent, murder is violent, and if you believe that these are not violent crimes, that if you believe that you're somehow justified because you are a white knight, then you are morally corrupt and do not deserve to be a champion of the environment. It is for this reason that I'm very proud to oppose this terrible motion.
Thank you very much, opposition reply speaker. Now, to conclude this debate as a whole, I call upon the government reply speaker. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, during World War II, the Allied forces considered collateral damages in order to fight the constant battle between the Allied forces and the Nazi Germany, whose the ideologies is for total domination. We think that this the stance that we have taken in this debate, that we consider collateral damages because it is needed in order to curb further exacerbation of the current problem that exists in the society itself. What the side opposition case is all about today? Number one, their case hinges on the fact that number one, they question whether the workers are liable or not. Firstly, we have responded that number one, we draw a parallel. We tell you that yes, those people are liable. Why? Because we think that even if a person pulls a trigger without any forms of attention, because basically the workers are forced to, right, in their characterization, even if they are forced to and without any sorts of intention, they are still accountable for second-degree murder, and we still think that the court of law still justify the killings, and therefore those workers are still liable for their actions, Mr. Speaker. Second point of accusation made, whether or not the MNCs are damaged or not. We think that the MNCs are damaged. I'll give you a parallel. During a war, for example, can you actually damage or can you actually kill Germany? We can't. We can't kill the idea of Nazi. We kill their foot soldiers, and this is what we are doing. And this is what war is all about, even to begin with, right, Mr. Speaker? So their side of this case, they accuse us of these people of shaking their, shaking their bellies in England. We think that those ideas is not relevant even at the first place, because through foot soldiers being killed is the only way in order to achieve the greater mean or actually winning the battle even at the first place. Third accusation is media attention. They question whether or not these remote areas are going to get media attention. We think that it is an unfair characterization where they say that these people in this secluded area will never going to get media attention. Whereas we think that this is why the reason we are going to do drastic changes to actually get this media attention. But even if these people are actually going to get media attention, they say that these people are going to label as terrorists. We have actually responded by saying, even if the media or the CNN have labeled these people as terrorists or as bad people, this actually provides an incentive for the whole society to actually discuss whether or not it is justified, these actions of these people. Therefore, natural discourse happens better in our case. What are the government's case for today? Number one, we justify, it is the justification of this radicalization, where drastic change is needed. We have justified to you that in the status quo, there are no sorts of organic changes that is happening. Of course, sure, we tell you that education, the government is educating students of the actually harms that these things are going to bring, but the fact that they are not going to change because the benefits or the luxurious position that they are in, therefore there are not going to be any sorts of societal reform. Therefore, we tell you that social reform is only going to happen if it's justified to any sorts of means. Therefore, we think that these drastic changes is going to be given the chance of actually improving. Second point of our government's case is this: these people, these activists, need the moral legitimacy from PETA or Greenpeace itself, because these people are the ones who are actually the people who fight for their same cause. If these two parties contradict, it causes the polarization of these people even more. And even so, these people will lose their morality in the war itself, therefore losing the psychological battle even to begin with. This is why we need the support. We need all parts of society to actually exist, to actually notice the current struggle that these activists are actually fighting for. And this is why we think side government has taken this bait. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all speakers, big props floors, big hands, and legitimate all.
Oh, God always wants the best for us.
Yeah.
I feel so 100 guys.